Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. The smell of home should have been comforting. Instead, it felt off. Logan Hawthorne stepped inside his house, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't explain. After serving 6 months in an undisclosed military operation, all he wanted was to surprise his wife and daughter. He had imagined this moment countless times. Savannah, his 16-year-old daughter, running into his arms, laughing about how much she missed him. Vanessa, his wife, pulling him into a tight embrace, whispering how empty the house had felt without him. Instead, the house was eerily quiet. Logan furrowed his brows. It was barely past 9. Savannah should have been watching TV, and Vanessa, she should have been waiting for him, shouldn't she? Then he heard it. A soft, breathy moan. A sound he knew all too well. His stomach turned to iron. Logan's boots barely made a sound as he walked toward the staircase. His military instincts took over, every step calculated, every breath controlled. His heart pounded harder with each sound that followed. A man's deep grunt. The rhythm of bodies moving. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open, and there she was, Vanessa, his wife, straddling another man in their bed. His grip on his duffel bag tightened. The man beneath Vanessa, Trey Holloway, grinned, completely unaware of Logan's presence. Logan stepped inside. The floor creaked. Vanessa's eyes snapped open. A gasp. A flurry of motion. Sheets yanked. Trey scrambling, falling off the bed, naked and wide-eyed. Logan, Vanessa stammered, clutching the sheets to her chest. Trey held up his hands. Whoa, man, listen. Logan didn't hear the rest. A sharp ringing filled his ears. His vision blurred with rage. His fists clenched so tight his knuckles cracked. But then something caught his attention. A phone, Trey's phone, lying on the nightstand. The screen was still lit. Messages open. A name he recognized. Savannah. Logan's blood turned ice cold. Why was Trey texting his daughter? And why the hell did the last message read, "Don't tell your dad. He'll never know"? Logan's world tilted. He didn't hear Vanessa's excuses. He barely registered Trey's desperate attempts to explain. The only thing that mattered was the text. His hands moved on their own. Before Trey could react, Logan grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. The sickening crack of impact barely satisfied the rage surging through him. "You're texting my daughter?" Logan's voice was eerily calm, but it dripped with something far more dangerous than rage, a promise of violence. Trey clawed at Logan's grip, face turning red. It's not what you think, man. Not what I think?" Logan's grip tightened. "What the hell were you telling her not to tell me?" Vanessa scrambled off the bed, trying to pull Logan back. "Logan, stop. You're hurting him. I'm about to do a lot worse." Logan didn't take his eyes off Trey. Trey's lips trembled. He was scared now. It was just a misunderstanding. "Look, man, say one more lie and I swear I'll snap your neck right now." Logan's voice was a low growl. Trey gulped. His body sagged against the wall. It was the party. The one a few weeks ago. We all had some drinks, man. I didn't think she'd say anything. Logan stilled. A party? Something clicked. Savannah had been acting strange since he'd last spoken to her on a video call. Distant. Reserved. When he asked about her weekend, she had barely responded. Now the puzzle pieces started forming an ugly picture. His breathing slowed. What happened at the party? Trey's lips pressed shut. A mistake. Logan pulled him forward and slammed him into the wall again. Trey coughed blood this time. "I won't ask again." Trey whimpered. His eyes darted to Vanessa, silently begging for help. She looked away. It was then Logan knew. She already knew. His pulse pounded in his ears. He released Trey, not out of mercy but because his next move would be something far worse than choking the life out of this worm. He turned to Vanessa. "What happened to Savannah?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Vanessa's lips trembled. "Logan." "What happened?" Silence. Then a whisper. "They hurt her." Logan's world shattered. Savannah didn't want to talk. She sat on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes distant. She hadn't spoken a word since Logan had stormed into her room an hour ago. He had tried everything, gentle questions, reassurance, promising that she was safe now. Nothing. She was a ghost of herself. Logan clenched his jaw. He was trying. He really was. But every time he looked at her bruised wrist, every time he noticed the way she flinched at sudden movements, a dark rage surged in his chest. Vanessa sat across the room, eyes red from crying. Logan hadn't spoken to her since she admitted the truth. She had known. She had known what Trey and his friends did, and she had done nothing. Logan inhaled sharply. Who else was involved? Vanessa hesitated. Don't lie. She swallowed hard. Trey. Blake Mitchell. Jason Kincaid. Ryan Decker. They were all there. Rich kids. Privileged families. Untouchable. And the police? She lowered her gaze. The senator, Trey's father, made sure nothing went public. The judge threw out the case. The cops buried the evidence. Logan laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh. Of course. Money had bought them all silence. Justice wasn't coming. Not the legal way. His gaze flickered to Savannah. Her body was so small, so fragile, curled up on that couch. Something inside him snapped. Logan stood up. Vanessa's eyes widened. Logan, what are you? I'm going to fix this. Savannah finally spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. Dad, what are you going to do? Logan looked at her, his jaw set, his eyes cold. I'm going to kill them all. The night was silent, but Logan's mind was anything but. His pulse pounded like a war drum as he sat in his truck, parked just outside a high-end downtown club in Charleston. Inside, Blake Mitchell, one of Savannah's attackers, was celebrating like he hadn't destroyed a girl's life. Logan watched through the rain-speckled windshield as Blake, dressed in a designer suit, laughed with his friends, untouched, unbothered, and completely unaware of what was coming. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. 6 months in a war zone, dodging bullets and executing classified missions, and yet nothing had ever made his blood boil like this. These weren't soldiers. They weren't trained killers. They were spoiled little cowards who thought money could erase their sins. Not this time. Logan exhaled, forcing himself to remain calm. He had spent the last 24 hours gathering intel. Blake was the weakest link, the type to fold under pressure. He wasn't the leader, but he had been there that night. He had touched Savannah. And now he would pay. As Blake stepped outside the club, drunk and unaware, Logan moved. He exited his truck with the silent grace of a predator, blending into the shadows. The street was quiet, the only sound being the rain tapping against the pavement. Blake fumbled for his keys. His driver hadn't arrived yet. Perfect. Logan approached from behind, swift and deadly, before grabbing Blake by the back of his neck and slamming his face against the car door. The sickening crack of bone against metal was drowned by the heavy downpour. Blake groaned, dazed, blood trickling down his face. What the? Logan threw him against the pavement, pinning him with a knee to his chest. Blake's drunken haze faded fast. Hey HUI, do you know who I am? I'll have you in a cell by morning, you son of a... Logan leaned in, his voice like ice. Do you know who I am? Blake froze. He blinked, squinting through the rain. Recognition dawned on his face, followed immediately by sheer terror. Why, you're Savannah's dad, he whispered. Logan pressed down harder, cutting off his air. You remember her now, don't you? Blake's hands clawed at Logan's wrist, desperate. He gasped for air. I didn't mean to. Shut up. Logan's voice was calm. Too calm. You had a choice. And you made the wrong one. A blade appeared in Logan's hand, the steel glinting in the dim streetlight. Blake's body jerked. Wait, please. But Logan didn't hesitate. He drove the knife into Blake's gut, twisting it slowly, watching the life drain from his eyes. For Savannah. For justice. For every father who never got the chance to avenge his daughter. Logan pulled the blade out, letting Blake's lifeless body slump to the pavement. He wiped the knife clean, took one last look at the corpse, and disappeared into the night. This was just the beginning. By morning, Blake Mitchell's murder was all over the news. Wealthy socialite. Promising future. Tragic demise. But Logan didn't care about the headlines. He was sitting in an old motel room watching the world react to his work. The comments online were divided, some mourning Blake, others whispering that maybe, just maybe, the bastard had it coming. Logan smirked. The fear had started. They knew someone was coming for them. His phone buzzed. A private forum he had hacked into last night had a fresh message. Jason Kincaid, this isn't random. Someone's hunting us. We need to do something. Logan's smirk widened. Yes, be afraid. He opened a private live stream under an alias. His voice, disguised and distorted, echoed through the feed. For those of you watching, I have a question. What city are you from? Where are you watching this justice unfold? Because make no mistake, this isn't just a story. This is a message. And you all know it. There are people who think they can do anything, take anything, and never face the consequences. Well, he leaned closer to the mic, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Not anymore. His chat flooded with responses. People were listening. People were choosing sides. And Logan had only just begun. Vanessa was shaking when she answered the phone. Hello? The voice on the other end was cold. Calculated. Vanessa. We need to talk. Trey's father. Senator Holloway. She swallowed hard. I don't know what's happening. Logan, I know exactly what's happening, the senator interrupted. His voice was like steel. Your husband is a threat. A dangerous one. And if you want to survive this, you need to listen carefully. Vanessa's fingers dug into the bedsheet. Survive. There was a long silence. Then the senator spoke, slow and deliberate. Logan Hawthorne has declared war. And war is messy. Vanessa's blood turned cold. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was a manhunt. And Logan? He was just getting started. Logan sat in the dimly lit motel room, staring at the list of names in front of him. He had already crossed off Blake Mitchell. 1 down. 3 to go. Jason Kincaid. Ryan Decker. Trey Holloway. And the real enemy, Senator Holloway. Logan exhaled, steadying the fire burning in his chest. He had spent years eliminating threats overseas, taking down terrorists and warlords. But nothing, not the gunfights, not the explosions, not the blood-stained deserts, had ever filled him with the kind of rage and purpose he felt now. Because this was personal. A knock at the door made him go still. His hand instinctively reached for his knife as he moved silently toward the door. He checked the peephole. A woman, early 40s, worn-out eyes. Detective Julia Lancaster. Logan cracked the door open, keeping the knife behind his back. Mr. Hawthorne, she said, her voice low. We need to talk. Logan didn't say a word, just studied her. Julia had been a good cop once. A rare kind. But she had been forced out of the department because she refused to play along with corruption. She wasn't a threat. He stepped back, letting her in. She walked in cautiously, glancing around the room. Blake Mitchell's dead. I know you did it. Logan leaned against the table, arms crossed. You have proof? Julia met his gaze. No. And I don't care. What I care about is who's next. Logan didn't flinch. You came here to stop me? She shook her head. No. I came here to warn you. If you're hunting those bastards, you're stepping into something bigger than you realize. Trey's father? He owns half the justice system. The moment you killed Blake, you declared war on a machine. Logan's jaw tightened. Then I'll burn the machine down. Julia sighed. I figured you'd say that. She slid a folder onto the table. What's this? Logan asked. Proof. Her voice was sharp. Documents. Transactions. Evidence that Trey's father paid off police, judges, even politicians to bury your daughter's case. Logan flipped through the pages. Every number, every signature, every name was a puzzle piece that connected back to the powerful elites protecting monsters. His stomach twisted. They all knew. And they chose to let it happen. He closed the folder, his fingers pressing into the paper. Why give this to me? Julia studied him. Because I know the law won't stop them. But maybe you will. Logan nodded once. The hunt continued. Trey Holloway sat in his penthouse, hands shaking as he scrolled through the news. Blake was dead. Jason and Ryan were freaking out, texting him nonstop. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were untouchable. The case had been erased. But now Blake was gone and someone was hunting them. His father had assured him that everything was under control, but Trey wasn't so sure anymore. His father was powerful, but he wasn't Logan Hawthorne. And Trey had seen that man's eyes. Cold. Calculated. The kind of eyes that don't stop until the job is done. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. Senator Holloway, stay put. Do not go anywhere. We are handling this. Trey wiped sweat from his forehead. His heart was pounding too fast. He needed something to take the edge off. A knock at the door made him jump. He swallowed hard and stood up. "Who is it?" No answer. His skin prickled. He grabbed the handgun his father had given him and moved toward the door slowly. Another knock. He licked his lips, hand trembling as he unlocked the door. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Just as he exhaled, a hand grabbed his neck from behind. Trey choked, the gun ripped from his grip before he was slammed against the wall. A voice, low, deadly, familiar. "I could kill you right now. Logan." Trey tried to scream, but Logan clamped a hand over his mouth. "I want you to feel what my daughter felt." Logan's breath was hot against his ear. "I want you to be afraid." Trey thrashed, but Logan was stronger. "Shoo," Logan whispered, pressing a knife against Trey's cheek. "We're going to have fun, you and I." And then, darkness. Logan knocked him out cold. The nightmare was only beginning. Vanessa stared at the TV screen, nails digging into her palm. The news replayed over and over. Blake's murder. The rising panic in Trey's circle. The rumors that Logan was behind it. She had tried calling him. No answer. Her pulse pounded. She knew what was coming. A knock at the door nearly made her jump out of her skin. When she opened it, she froze. Senator Holloway stood there, flanked by two men in black suits. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Vanessa," he said smoothly. "We need to talk." She stepped back, panic flaring. I don't know where Logan is." The senator stepped inside without invitation. His presence was suffocating. Powerful. Dangerous. "I'm not here to ask about Logan," he said. "I'm here to ask about your loyalty." Vanessa swallowed hard. "Your husband is destroying everything I've built." The senator's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet rage. "And I need to know, Vanessa, are you with him? Or with me?" She hesitated. She loved Logan. She really did. But she also loved her life. Her comfort. The status that came with being connected to the Holloways. The senator tilted his head. "It's a simple choice, really. Stay with your husband, and you'll burn with him." Her heart pounded. Or she could betray Logan. Save herself. Her lips trembled. She looked down, voice barely a whisper. "What do you need me to do?" The senator smiled. Vanessa had made her choice. And Logan Hawthorne's greatest betrayal was about to begin. Logan sat in the abandoned warehouse, the air thick with the scent of oil and rusted metal. Across from him, Trey Holloway dangled from a chair, wrists zip-tied behind his back, his once expensive suit now soaked in sweat. Blood dripped from a split in his lip, his left eye already swelling shut. Logan sat quietly watching him, studying him. Trey had woken up in pure panic, thrashing against the restraints, screaming until his throat went raw. Now exhaustion had set in, but the fear? That hadn't left his eyes. "Are you scared?" Logan finally asked, his voice calm. Trey's breath hitched. He swallowed hard, trying to maintain his arrogance, but it was slipping. "And my dad's gonna kill you, man," he stammered. "He's powerful. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a dead man walking." Logan leaned forward. "You think your father can save you?" Trey nodded rapidly. "You're out of your mind if you think you can win this war." Logan let a slow smirk stretch across his lips. Then he pulled out his phone and pressed play. Trey's own voice filled the room. A recording. His drunken, disgusting laughter. The things he and his friends had said that night. The proof of what they did to Savannah. Trey's eyes widened in horror. What the F? Logan cut the recording off. "I wonder what the world will think when they hear this?" Trey thrashed. "No, you can't." Logan tilted his head. "Oh, I can. But first, I want you to feel real fear." And then he grabbed the pliers. Trey's screams echoed through the warehouse. And Logan? He didn't stop. Senator Holloway was pacing. In his private study, the glow from his desk lamp flickered against his face, his eyes dark with frustration. Blake Mitchell? Dead. Jason and Ryan? Terrified. And now, Trey was missing. His phone buzzed. He snatched it off the desk. "What?" A voice on the other end. A private mercenary. One of the best. "Sir," the man said. "We found Logan Hawthorne." The senator's spine went rigid. "Where?" "South Dockyards. He's been off-grid, but he's not hiding. He's setting something up." The senator clenched his jaw. Logan wasn't running. He was inviting a fight. A long pause. Then cold, sharp words. Kill him. The mercenary hesitated. With all due respect, sir, he's former special forces. Taking him head-on is suicide. The senator exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. Then don't take him head-on. Take away his leverage. A dark smirk curled on his lips. Find his daughter. The call ended. The senator leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping against the desk. This was a war. And wars were won by taking hostages. Logan felt it before he saw it. The way the city suddenly felt off. The way certain cars seemed to linger too long. The way his military instincts screamed at him. They were watching him. He stood at the docks, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the water's reflection for movement behind him. The senator had made his move. He could feel it. And then his burner phone buzzed. He pulled it out. A single text. An unknown number. We have her. Logan's grip on the phone tightened. Another text came through. A photo. Savannah. Her hands were tied. A rag stuffed in her mouth. Eyes wide with terror. Logan's world stopped. Everything inside him turned ice cold. His chest rose and fell with slow, controlled breaths. They had taken his daughter. His vision darkened with fury. A final text appeared. Come alone. Or she dies. Logan exhaled through his nose. They thought they had him trapped. They thought they were in control. But they had just sealed their fate. Because now Logan Hawthorne was done playing games. Logan stood in front of the bathroom mirror of his rundown motel room, staring at himself. What stared back wasn't a man. It was something else. Something darker. Something unstoppable. They had taken Savannah. And they thought they had won. They thought they could control him. Logan cracked his knuckles, the tension in his body coiling tighter than a loaded spring. He had spent years hunting war criminals, breaking insurgents, slipping behind enemy lines and leaving destruction in his wake. He had taken out entire terrorist cells single-handedly. And now they had made it personal. He grabbed his bag, zipping it open. Inside, tools of war. A military-grade Glock 19, suppressor attached. A combat knife, the handle wrapped tight. Smoke grenades. Tactical gear. Everything he needed to turn this city into a battlefield. Logan knew the senator's game. They had sent him a location, a trap, no doubt. But that was fine. Let them believe he would walk into it like a desperate father. They had underestimated him. Because this wasn't a mission. This was vengeance. He grabbed his gear and headed out into the night. The warehouse was in an industrial district on the outskirts of Charleston. Abandoned. Isolated. Perfect for an execution. Logan parked his stolen truck a mile away, moving on foot. His every step was silent, his breaths controlled. He had no backup. No team. He didn't need one. A perimeter of armed men circled the warehouse. Mercenaries. The senator had hired professionals this time. Not that it mattered. Logan slithered through the shadows, his knife sliding out of its sheath. He moved like a phantom, silent, precise, deadly. The first man didn't even see it coming. A quick movement. Blade to throat. A gurgle, then silence. One down. The second was texting on his phone when Logan buried his knife into his ribs, covering his mouth before dragging him into the darkness. Two down. The others? They didn't even realize death was moving among them. Within minutes, Logan had cleared the perimeter. The bodies lay in the shadows, lifeless, never even getting the chance to scream. Now it was time to go inside. With one deep breath, Logan slipped through a back entrance, pressing against the wall, scanning the scene before him. There she was. Savannah. Tied to a chair, gagged, her eyes wide with fear. And in front of her? The senator's personal enforcer. A brute of a man. 6'4", built like a tank with a sadistic grin. You think your daddy's coming for you? The man sneered, tilting Savannah's chin up. He's not making it out of this alive, sweetheart. A whisper of movement. The enforcer's head snapped up. Too late. Logan moved like a storm. A silenced gunshot. The enforcer's forehead exploded in blood as he dropped like dead weight. Chaos. The remaining guards whirled around, guns raised. But Logan was already in motion. He moved like a shadow, weaving between crates, gunfire cutting through the air. Bullets sparked against steel, ricocheting off walls. Logan didn't waste ammo. Every shot found its mark. A guard screamed as a bullet ripped through his knee. Another dropped, a hole between his eyes. Within seconds the room was silent. The only ones left standing? Logan. And Savannah. He rushed to her, cutting the ropes, pulling the gag from her mouth. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "Dad?" she gasped. I thought you were." Logan pressed a kiss to her forehead. "It's over, baby girl." Except it wasn't, because someone was still missing. The senator. Logan's eyes darkened. Time to end this. Senator Holloway sat in his private office, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand, completely unaffected. His men were dead. His operation was falling apart. Yet he wasn't afraid, because he knew something Logan didn't. He was still untouchable. Or so he thought. The doors burst open. Logan stepped inside, his gun aimed directly at the senator's head. The old man barely flinched. Instead he exhaled, setting his glass down. "Took you long enough." Logan didn't blink. "You took my daughter." The senator smirked. "And yet here I am. Sitting here. Not dead." He leaned forward. "Because we both know you're not going to pull that trigger." Logan took another step closer. "You think I won't kill you?" "I think," the senator said, "that you're a soldier. And soldiers follow the rules." Logan exhaled slowly. Then he smiled. "You're right," he murmured. "Soldiers follow the rules." His grip on the gun tightened. "Good thing I'm not a soldier anymore." And then he pulled the trigger. The senator jerked back, blood splattering across the desk. The life drained from his eyes as he slumped forward. Logan stood there watching him die. No remorse. No hesitation. Just justice. And just like that, the war was over. Or so he thought. Logan stood over the senator's lifeless body, the gun still warm in his hands. The once powerful man who had corrupted the justice system, silenced victims, and protected monsters was now just another corpse. A part of Logan should have felt something. Relief, closure, victory. Instead he felt nothing. His job wasn't done yet. He turned to leave, but the second he stepped into the hallway, his instincts flared. Something wasn't right. Then he heard it. A voice through a loudspeaker outside. "Logan Hawthorne. Drop your weapon. Step out with your hands in the air." The FBI. Logan's jaw tightened. He should have known they'd get here eventually. The senator had been a powerful man. His death wouldn't go unnoticed. But Logan wasn't about to surrender. He moved quickly, scanning the room for exits. The house was surrounded. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, the sound of multiple helicopters slicing through the night sky. He wasn't getting out of this clean. He reached for his comm device, tapping into his secure line. One last call. "Savannah," he said, his voice steady. His daughter's voice cracked through the static. "Dad, please tell me you're okay." Logan's fingers curled around the receiver. "Listen to me. I need you to do exactly as I say. Dad. I need you to disappear." His voice hardened. "Go to the safe house. The one I told you about. Use the second passport. Take nothing that can track you." There was a beat of silence. Savannah knew what this meant. Tears filled her voice. "Dad, are you coming with me?" Logan exhaled. "I love you, Savannah." Then he cut the line. He didn't have time for goodbyes. Because the FBI was coming in hot. The second the flashbangs hit the windows, Logan was already on the move. Across town, Vanessa sat on the edge of a hotel bed, her phone trembling in her hands. The news was everywhere. The senator was dead. The police, the FBI, the entire damn country was now hunting Logan. And yet she didn't feel relief. Because she knew. He would come for her next. She had betrayed him. Sold him out to save herself. To stay in the senator's favor. And now, the man she had sided with was dead. Her heart pounded as she reached for a cigarette with shaking fingers. Maybe Logan wouldn't find her. Maybe he'd be caught first. Maybe. A click echoed in the dimly lit hotel room. Vanessa froze. She turned her head slowly. Logan was standing in the doorway. Her stomach dropped. Logan," she whispered. He didn't speak. He just stared at her. The kind of stare that drained all the warmth from a room. She licked her lips, forcing out a shaky laugh. You wouldn't hurt me. I mean, I'm still Savannah's mother." Logan took a slow step forward. Vanessa swallowed hard. "Come on, Logan. You're not a killer. You wouldn't hurt the woman you loved, would you?" Something flickered in Logan's eyes. And then he laughed. Not a normal laugh. A hollow, dead sound. Vanessa's skin crawled. Logan leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "I loved my wife," he whispered. "But you? You're just another loose end." Vanessa's scream never left her throat. Logan left Vanessa's body behind without a second glance. No remorse. No second thoughts. She had made her choice. Now, only one name remained on his list. Trey Holloway. The last of Savannah's attackers. The one who had started it all. Logan already knew where to find him. Trey wasn't smart enough to disappear. He'd be hiding somewhere he thought was safe. Somewhere heavily guarded. Logan moved through the city like a ghost, slipping past police barricades, avoiding patrols. He knew Charleston better than anyone. He reached the Holloway estate just before dawn. It was fortified. Armed guards patrolled the premises, their movements precise. But Logan wasn't walking through the front door. He moved like a shadow, scaling the fence, slipping through the cracks, silencing guards one by one. By the time he reached the main house, no one was left breathing. He pushed open the bedroom door. And there he was, Trey Holloway, curled up on the floor, crying. The once arrogant, untouchable rich boy was now a sniveling coward. Logan took his time stepping forward. Trey's head snapped up. His face was pale, drenched in sweat. He knew why Logan was here. Please," Trey gasped, crawling back against the wall. I didn't mean to." Logan cocked his head. "Didn't mean to what?" Trey's hands trembled. I was drunk, man, I didn't think it would." Logan snapped. Before Trey could finish his sentence, Logan grabbed him by the throat, lifting him clean off the ground, slamming him against the wall. "You didn't think?" Logan snarled. Trey sobbed. "Please, man. I swear." Logan's grip tightened. "Do you have any idea what you did to my daughter?" Trey's face turned purple. His legs kicked, struggling, begging. Logan leaned in close. "I want you to know exactly how it feels," he whispered. And then, crack. Logan's hand snapped Trey's neck like a twig. The last monster was dead. The list was complete. And for the first time in a long time, Logan felt peace. Logan sat in the darkened warehouse, the scent of oil and blood thick in the air. Trey Holloway's lifeless body lay crumpled in the corner, his head at an unnatural angle, his once arrogant mouth frozen in a silent scream. The last name on the list was crossed out. But the war wasn't over. Logan knew that the moment he stepped outside this building, the entire world would be waiting. The senator was dead. His son was dead. Vanessa was dead. The corrupt system had been dismantled, piece by piece. And now Logan was the most wanted man in America. He pressed his back against the cold concrete wall, inhaling deeply. He had no regrets. He had done what the system refused to do. He had delivered true justice. But the job wasn't done yet. Savannah was still out there. And as long as he was still breathing, she wasn't safe. The distant hum of helicopters cut through the night. They were coming. The warehouse trembled with the force of military-grade SUVs pulling up outside, tires screeching against the pavement. FBI, SWAT, local law enforcement. They had all come for him. Logan's fingers wrapped around his pistol, but he didn't raise it. Not yet. A voice blared through a loudspeaker, shaking the rusted metal walls of the warehouse. "Logan Hawthorne, this is the FBI. Come out with your hands up. There is nowhere left to run." Logan closed his eyes. He wasn't going to run. Not anymore. His war was over. But before it ended, he had one last message to deliver. The entire world was watching. News stations had been following his rampage for weeks. Social media had turned him into a legend, a myth, a symbol of vengeance. To some, he was a terrorist. To others, he was justice. Logan reached into his bag and pulled out a burner phone. He had prepared for this. With a few quick taps, he activated the live feed. His face appeared on screens across the country. Dark, blood-stained, and utterly unafraid. His voice was calm, steady. "If you're watching this, it means my war is almost over. You know what I've done. You've seen the headlines, the reports, the bodies. But what you haven't seen is the truth." The chat exploded with comments. Tens of thousands of people were watching. But Logan didn't pause. "The people I killed? They weren't innocent. They were predators. Monsters protected by money and power. They hurt the weak and walked away clean. Not anymore." He exhaled slowly. "I wasn't the first father to lose a daughter to the system. And I won't be the last. His gaze hardened. So tell me, where are you watching from? What city are you in? Because if you think your city is clean, you're wrong. Corruption exists everywhere. And it will never stop until people stand up and fight back. The chat flooded with city names. People from every corner of the country, hell, even from overseas, dropping their locations. Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Houston, Miami, London, Tokyo. Everywhere. Logan let a small smile touch his lips. Justice doesn't come from the law. It comes from people who refuse to stay silent. He looked toward the warehouse doors where the FBI was preparing to breach. I have no regrets. And neither should you. Then he cut the feed, tossed the phone, and waited for them to come. The first flashbang hit the warehouse floor, filling the room with white-hot light. Logan moved on instinct, rolling behind cover as armed agents stormed the building. Hands in the air. He didn't comply. Bullets tore through the air, splintering concrete, shattering glass. Logan fired back, not to kill but to disrupt. This wasn't a battle he planned to win. This was a message. He took out a kneecap here, a shoulder there. Enough to make them hesitate. But they just kept coming. A bullet grazed his side, the heat searing through his skin. His vision blurred, but he stayed standing. He had to. Then a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Logan. Stand down. Logan froze. Through the dust and smoke, Agent Dominic Reyes stepped forward, gun raised, but not firing. You know how this ends, Hawthorne? Logan clenched his jaw. His hands trembled. Not with fear. Not with pain. But with something heavier. Acceptance. He dropped his gun. A ripple of silence filled the room. Then they swarmed him. Knees in his back. Hands twisting his arms behind him. Cold steel cuffs snapping into place. Logan didn't fight. Because his mission was complete. His daughter was safe. The monsters were dead. And now the world would never forget what he had done. As they dragged him out of the warehouse, cameras flashing, the entire nation watching, Logan Hawthorne smiled. The courtroom was silent. Hundreds of reporters, cameras, and onlookers filled the gallery, all waiting for the same thing, the fate of the most dangerous man in America. Logan Hawthorne sat at the defense table, calm, unreadable. The bruises on his face from the arrest had faded, but his eyes? They were as sharp as ever. Across from him, the prosecution team stood ready. They called him a terrorist, a murderer, an enemy of the state. They listed every crime, every body, every act of violence. But what they didn't mention, the crimes of the men he killed. Not once. Logan sat still as the lead prosecutor, District Attorney Michael Langley, stepped forward. A man in a sharp suit, armed with polished words. This country is built on laws, Langley said, his voice echoing through the hall. But the moment we allow vigilantes like Logan Hawthorne to decide who lives and who dies, we destroy the very foundation of justice. Logan didn't flinch. Langley's voice rose. Mr. Hawthorne didn't just break the law. He waged a one-man war against the justice system. He murdered elected officials, police officers, businessmen. He didn't just seek revenge. He chose to be executioner, judge, and jury. The jury listened. Some with cold, unreadable expressions. Others with something else in their eyes. Respect. Sympathy. Then the defense attorney, Logan's court-appointed lawyer, stood up. She turned, looking the jury in the eyes. What Mr. Langley failed to mention, she said, is that the people Logan Hawthorne killed were not innocent. They were rapists, abusers, corrupt politicians who manipulated the law to escape justice. She let that sink in. The real question isn't whether Logan Hawthorne is guilty of murder. Yes. He won't deny that. Logan leaned forward. He wouldn't. The question is, she continued, her voice dropping, why did the system fail so badly that a man like him had to step in? A murmur spread through the room. Logan watched the jury. Some of them, most of them, were thinking. He had done what the law refused to do. But was that a crime, or a duty? The world watched. But no one more than Savannah Hawthorne. She sat in the gallery, staring at the man who had once been her father. He looked different, harder, colder. He wasn't the same man who used to read her bedtime stories. That man had died the night she was attacked. Now there was only Logan Hawthorne, the executioner. And yet, her hands trembled in her lap. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what would happen if they convicted him. Savannah had been offered protection, a full new identity, a life where she never had to say the name Hawthorne again. She had refused. Because no matter what he had done, no matter how much blood was on his hands, he had done it for her. And now they wanted her to testify. The court needed to hear from the one person who had suffered the most. She stepped to the witness stand, breathing hard. Logan's eyes locked onto hers. For the first time in weeks, they were father and daughter again. The prosecutor approached. "Miss Hawthorne," he said gently, "do you believe your father is a hero?" The room held its breath. Savannah inhaled. "I believe," she said slowly, "that if the system had done its job, my father wouldn't have needed to be a hero." A ripple spread through the courtroom. Logan's jaw tightened. Pride swelled in his chest. Savannah wasn't running anymore. She was standing up. The jury deliberated for 2 days. News networks covered it endlessly. Some called Logan a monster. Others called him a martyr. Finally, the courtroom doors swung open. The judge sat down. The jury filed in. The air was thick with tension. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. The foreman stood up. A man in his 50s, eyes heavy with the weight of the decision. "Yes, Your Honor." The paper shook slightly as he read. "On the count of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Logan Hawthorne." The entire country held its breath. "Guilty." Savannah sucked in a sharp breath. Logan didn't react. But the foreman wasn't done. "However," he continued, "on the count of premeditated murder with malice, we find the defendant not guilty." A collective gasp. The judge leaned forward. "To clarify, the jury finds that the killings were committed out of moral justification?" The foreman nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge exhaled, gripping the gavel. "Then under federal sentencing laws, Logan Hawthorne is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole." A mix of cheers and outrage filled the courtroom. Some wanted the death penalty. Some wanted him set free. But Logan? He just closed his eyes. His war was over. And he was still breathing. For now. United States Penitentiary, Florence ADX. A fortress built for the worst of the worst. Murderers, cartel lords, terrorists, men who had nothing left to lose. And now Logan Hawthorne was one of them. They called it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. No one had ever escaped. No one ever would. At least that's what they thought. The iron bars slammed shut behind him. A life sentence. But Logan didn't believe in life sentences. Because he wasn't done yet. Not even close. The warden, a cold-eyed man named Warden Grayson, walked beside Logan as guards escorted him to his cell. "You don't belong here," Grayson muttered under his breath. "You're a soldier. A patriot. Half the guards in this place respect you." Logan said nothing. Grayson sighed. "But rules are rules. And the people in charge? They want you buried, Hawthorne." Logan kept his steps steady, his mind calculating. He had expected this. What he hadn't expected. The prisoners. As he stepped into the main block, eyes turned toward him. Some filled with curiosity. Others with recognition. And a few with hatred. A massive man with tattoos covering his face leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Hawthorne," he muttered. Logan didn't react. The man smirked. "Word is you've got a body count bigger than anyone in here. Guess that makes you the new king." A murmur spread through the block. Logan locked eyes with him. Then without warning he struck. One brutal punch. The man collapsed, choking on his own blood. The entire block went silent. Logan stood over him, voice calm. "I don't want a throne." His knuckles dripped red. "I want out." The prison erupted. Logan had just declared war. Savannah hadn't stopped fighting. While the rest of the world moved on, while reporters turned Logan into a legend and criminals whispered his name like a ghost story, she was still trying to save him. She slammed a folder onto the desk in front of Agent Dominic Reyes. "There has to be a way," she demanded. Reyes sighed, rubbing his temples. "Savannah. Don't Savannah me." She leaned forward. "You know what my father did was right. You know those men deserved it." Reyes was silent. Because she was right. But that wasn't how the world worked. Savannah pointed at the file. "That's proof of judicial misconduct. The senator covered up everything. If we can prove that, we can..." "What?" "Get him released." Reyes shook his head. "Not gonna happen. Not in this lifetime." Savannah's hands clenched into fists. She refused to accept that. I don't care what it takes, she whispered. I'm getting him out. Reyes exhaled. And then his phone buzzed. A text. A known number. Hawthorne isn't staying in that prison. Reyes' blood ran cold. Because the prison had just gone on lockdown. And Logan? Logan was about to make his move. ADX Florence was built to be inescapable. But Logan had never believed in impossible. For weeks he had been studying every inch of the prison. Learning routines. Watching the guards. Finding the weak spots. And tonight? Tonight he was getting out. The riot had been the perfect distraction. Prisoners were fighting. Guards were stretched thin. And Logan? Logan was already moving. He slipped through the chaos, stealing a guard's keycard, knocking out 2 men along the way. Then alarms blared. They knew. They knew he was gone. Logan bolted down the corridor, his heartbeat steady. He reached the maintenance tunnels, the route he had memorized for weeks. And then, a shadow stepped in front of him. A man. Big. Strong. Brisk. The agent raised his gun. You're not leaving this prison, Hawthorne? Logan stared at him. You're either letting me out, he said, voice like steel, or you're gonna have to kill me. Reyes didn't move. The alarm screamed. Guards were coming. Logan took a step closer. What kind of man are you, Reyes? The kind who follows orders? Or the kind who does what's right? Reyes' finger hovered over the trigger. Logan's fate was in his hands. And the world was waiting to see what he would do. The prison alarm screamed, red warning lights flashing against the cold steel walls. Logan stood face to face with Agent Dominic Reyes, the one man who could either let him go, or end his escape right here. Reyes' gun was steady. His eyes? Not so much. You know I can't let you leave, Hawthorne, Reyes said, his voice even. But Logan caught the flicker of hesitation. Logan's muscles tensed, ready to fight if he had to. Then shoot me, Logan said simply. Do it. Reyes' jaw tightened. He didn't pull the trigger. You're not the villain here, Reyes, Logan continued, stepping closer. You know the system is broken. You know what they did. Reyes' hands shook slightly. He did know. Logan could see it, the war going on inside him. The part of him that followed orders, and the part that wanted justice. Then without a word, Reyes lowered his gun. Go, he muttered. Logan nodded once, no words wasted. No time left. He moved. Through the tunnels. Past the security doors Reyes had just unlocked. And then, freedom. The cold night air hit him like a shockwave as he emerged into the Colorado wilderness. For the first time in months, Logan Hawthorne was a free man. But the chase? The chase was only beginning. Logan didn't stop running. Through the thick forest surrounding ADX Florence, dodging helicopters and searchlights, his mind raced. He had no weapons. No resources. But he had something more valuable. A plan. By the time dawn hit, the news had already spread. Logan Hawthorne has escaped prison. America's most wanted man is on the run. The country exploded. Half the world was cheering him on, calling him a symbol of justice, a man who had fought back against corruption. The other half. They wanted him dead. Every law enforcement agency in the country was hunting him. Borders were locked down. Airports swarmed with security. And yet, Logan remained unseen. Because while the FBI was watching the roads, Logan was already 2 steps ahead. He didn't need roads. He was a ghost. And ghosts? They didn't leave footprints. Savannah sat in a dingy motel room, the curtains drawn shut, her heart pounding. She had been waiting for the phone to ring. And when it did, she almost didn't pick up. But she did. Dad. Her voice was a whisper. On the other end, Logan's voice was calm. I don't have much time, sweetheart. Tears burned in her eyes. Dad, where are you? They're saying. I need you to listen carefully, Savannah. She swallowed hard. He was saying goodbye. I'm not coming back, Logan said. Not now. Maybe not ever. But you? You still have a life to live. Savannah choked back a sob. I don't care about any of that. You have to be stronger than me, baby girl. Silence. Then Logan's voice softened. I did what I had to do. And I don't regret a single second of it. Savannah closed her eyes. She understood. Will I ever see you again? She whispered. Pause. Then. Maybe. The line went dead. Savannah stared at the phone, tears running down her face. She knew what this meant. Logan Hawthorne was gone. Vanished. And no one, not the FBI, not the government, not the world, would ever find him again. But somewhere out there in the shadows her father was still watching. Still waiting. And if the world needed him again, Logan Hawthorne would return. The world thought it knew everything about Logan Hawthorne. His military record. His kills. His revenge. But what they didn't know, Logan Hawthorne had planned for this moment all along. Somewhere in South America. A quiet village tucked away between dense jungles and mountains. A place with no cameras, no digital footprints, no way for the government to track movements. Logan sat in a small, dimly lit bar, the condensation from his whiskey glass dripping onto the worn wooden counter. He blended in, just another foreigner passing through. No one knew him here. And that was exactly what he needed. The bartender, an old man with a scar running down his cheek, leaned in. "You're not a tourist, amigo," the man said in a low, knowing tone. Logan didn't reply. Because he wasn't a tourist. He was a ghost. He had spent months moving from safe house to safe house, following the same tactics he had used in Black Ops missions. Never staying in one place, never leaving a pattern. But he knew something the world didn't. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting. Because something was coming. Something big. And when it did, Logan Hawthorne would be ready. Back in Washington, Agent Dominic Reyes stood in front of a massive digital screen. On it, a worldwide manhunt for Logan Hawthorne. Interpol. The CIA. Military intelligence. Every resource the U.S. government had was hunting him. But no one had found a single trace. Reyes exhaled sharply. He had spent his entire career following orders, tracking the world's most dangerous men. And yet, he didn't want to catch Logan. Because deep down he knew Logan wasn't the villain here. Reyes turned as his superior, Director Holloway, stepped into the room. "Give me something, Reyes. Tell me we have a lead." Reyes shook his head. "Nothing." Holloway narrowed his eyes. "You don't sound disappointed." Reyes clenched his jaw but didn't respond. Holloway sighed, pacing. "The public is divided. Half the country wants him dead, the other half wants to elect him for president." Reyes smirked. "That's because he did what we wouldn't." Holloway shot him a look. "Are you saying we should just let him go?" Reyes met his gaze. Steady. Unflinching. "I'm saying maybe we should think about why we're chasing him in the first place." Holloway scoffed. "The man killed people. People who deserved it," Reyes corrected. Silence. The air hung heavy between them. Finally, Holloway exhaled. "Fine. If Hawthorne doesn't show himself in the next 6 months, we officially declare him dead." Reyes nodded. Because he knew something Holloway didn't. Logan wasn't dead. And one day, he'd return. Savannah Hawthorne had changed. The quiet, broken girl from before? She was gone. Now she was stronger, smarter, sharper. And she had a plan. She had spent months investigating the remaining corrupt officials. The men who had tried to bury her case, the ones who were still walking free. Her father had started the war. But she was going to finish it. She stood in front of a computer screen, scrolling through names, locations, secret transactions. She wasn't a killer like her father. But she knew how to destroy lives in other ways. With the right information she could take down the rest of them. The system had failed her once. It wouldn't fail her again. She tapped into an encrypted chat. A single message flashed onto the screen. "Unknown user, the job isn't done yet. Are you in?" She didn't hesitate. "Savannah, I'm in." And just like that, the Hawthorne legacy wasn't over. It was just beginning. Logan Hawthorne sat at the edge of a rooftop in Buenos Aires, Argentina, the city lights stretching far below him. A burner laptop sat on the ledge beside him, the screen glowing in the dark. And on it, Savannah's name. He had spent months off the grid, staying one step ahead of the law, but he had never stopped watching. His daughter was making moves. Big moves. She wasn't just living her life. She was coming for them. For the judges. The politicians. The men who had let her case be buried. And the crazy part? She was doing it without a gun. She was using information. Leverage. Strategy. Taking down her enemies from the inside out. Logan felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Pride. She was his daughter. And she had learned well. But there was one problem. Savannah was playing with fire. And fire? had a way of burning back. Savannah had been planning this for months. Late nights. Sleepless hours spent digging through hidden files, secret transactions, offshore accounts. And now, it was time to make a move. She adjusted her earpiece as she walked into the government building in Washington, D.C. To the world, she was just another college student doing an internship. But in reality, she was about to ruin the life of a very powerful man. She walked straight into the office of Judge William Croft, one of the men who had helped bury her case. One of the men who had called her father a monster. Judge Croft looked up from his desk, confused. "Do I know you?" Savannah smiled. "No," she said, "but you will." She placed a folder on his desk. Inside, proof of every dirty deal he had ever made. Every bribe. Every hidden payout. His entire career, ruined in a single document. His face drained of color. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. Savannah tilted her head. "That doesn't matter. What matters is what you're going to do next." Judge Croft's fingers trembled. "Are you blackmailing me?" Savannah leaned in, her voice low. "Oh no, Your Honor. I'm giving you a choice." She slid a flash drive across the table. "Resign. Tonight. Or this goes public." Judge Croft stared at her. His hands shook, because he knew. Savannah wasn't bluffing. And she wasn't her father. She wasn't going to kill him. She was going to destroy him. And that was so much worse. Logan had promised himself he wouldn't interfere. That Savannah was strong enough to handle this on her own. But when he saw Judge Croft's car explode on the news the next morning, he knew. Someone else was moving in. Someone was watching Savannah. And if she kept pushing forward, they were going to come for her. Logan grabbed his bag, stuffing it with weapons, cash, and a fresh passport. His quiet life in the shadows? Over. His daughter was in danger. And there was only one thing in this world that could bring Logan Hawthorne back into the fight. Family. He boarded a plane back to the United States. It was time to go home. Washington, D.C. A cold rain fell over the city, slicking the streets in a gray sheen as Savannah Hawthorne stepped out of her apartment, unaware she was being watched. Logan stood across the street, hidden in the shadows of an alleyway, his hood drawn low over his face. He hadn't seen Savannah in over a year. Not since the trial. Not since he disappeared. And now she was walking straight into a war she didn't even realize had begun. Judge Croft's car explosion hadn't been an accident. Someone had killed him before Savannah's evidence could take him down publicly. That meant one thing. She had gotten too close. And now, they were going to come for her. Logan took a slow breath, steadying his pulse. He had spent months in hiding, watching from a distance, keeping his presence invisible. But now he was done hiding. He crossed the street, falling into step behind her, keeping his movements silent. He knew her routine. Where she lived. Where she worked. Where she thought she was safe. And he also knew how easy it would be for someone to take her. No, not happening. Savannah reached the coffee shop on the corner, stepping inside. Logan waited a few moments, then followed. The cafe was small, warm, filled with the scent of coffee and fresh pastries. Savannah was sitting in the corner, her laptop open, her focus deep. Logan moved to the counter, ordered a black coffee, then took a seat at the table across from her. And then he spoke. "You've been making a lot of noise, Savannah?" Her body froze. Slowly she looked up. And when her eyes landed on him, her father, the man she thought she might never see again, her breath caught in her throat. "Dad." Logan gave her a small nod, taking a sip of his coffee. "Miss me?" Savannah's hands shook. She hadn't seen her father in so long, not since he disappeared after escaping prison. She had spent months wondering if he was even alive. And now he was sitting across from her like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, leaning forward. "They're still looking for you." Logan smirked, his eyes flickering with something dark. "They're always looking for me. That's not why I'm here." Savannah swallowed hard. "Then why?" Logan's face turned serious. "Because you made a mistake. And now, you've got their attention." Savannah stiffened. "Whose attention?" Logan sighed, leaning back. "The people behind Croft. The people you're trying to expose." He stared at her. The real power. Savannah's blood ran cold. She had spent months going after corrupt officials, using her father's playbook, but she hadn't thought they'd retaliate this quickly. "You think they killed Croft?" she asked. Logan nodded. "I know they did." Savannah took a shaky breath, her mind spinning. This was bigger than she thought. Much bigger. And she had walked right into it. "I can handle this, Dad," she said, her voice firm. "I'm not a kid anymore." Logan studied her, his expression unreadable. And then he said, "Then why is there a man watching you from across the street?" Savannah's heart stopped. She turned her head, slow, careful. Across the street, a black sedan sat parked at the curb. A man in a suit, sunglasses on despite the rain, sat in the driver's seat. Watching her. Waiting. Savannah's hands clenched into fists. "They're not just watching, Savannah," Logan murmured. "They're hunting." Savannah's breath hitched. "Then let's hunt them back." They moved fast. Within hours, Logan and Savannah were in a safe house, planning. Logan spread out files, photos, and maps across the table. "These people don't make mistakes. They kill problems before they start." Savannah nodded. "So we become their problem." Logan smirked. "Exactly. They had one shot. Whoever was behind Judge Croft's death wasn't just protecting corruption. They were running it. And now, Logan and Savannah were about to burn them to the ground. Washington, D.C., midnight. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Logan Hawthorne crouched behind a parked car, his gun steady in his hands. Beside him, Savannah was checking her earpiece, her face calm but focused. This was it. The final target. The man behind the corruption. The one who had pulled every string, buried every case, and made sure monsters like Trey Holloway walked free. Secretary of Defense Mitchell Grayson. A name no one dared to say aloud. Because he wasn't just part of the system. He was the system. The plan. Savannah had set the trap perfectly. Using encrypted leaks, she had baited Grayson into believing one of his closest men had turned against him. The result? A private meeting at a secret location. No press. No bodyguards. Just him and one trusted associate. And that was all Logan needed. "You ready for this?" Logan asked, his voice low. Savannah exhaled, her eyes burning with determination. "I was born ready." Logan smirked. His daughter had become a warrior. The kill. Inside the building, Grayson was pacing. He was paranoid, restless. His world was crumbling. The judge was dead. The senator was dead. Logan Hawthorne was still alive. And now he was seconds away from facing his fate. Logan moved first. Silent. Quick. Precise. Before Grayson's bodyguard could react, a blade slid across his throat. He fell without a sound. And then, Logan stepped into the light. "We need to talk." Grayson froze. His face went pale. His lips trembled. "Hawthorne." Logan tilted his head. "You don't look happy to see me." Grayson lunged for his gun. Bang. A bullet tore through his knee. He collapsed screaming. Logan holstered his gun. "That was for my daughter." Savannah stepped forward, a flash drive in her hand. "And this," she said. "This is for every other girl your system destroyed." She tossed the drive onto his chest. It contained every dirty secret. Every name. Every bribe. Enough evidence to bring down everything. Grayson panted, his face twisted in agony. You think this changes anything?" Logan crouched beside him, his voice deathly calm. "I don't think. I know." And then he pulled the trigger. A single shot. The last monster was dead. The aftermath. The next morning the world woke up to chaos. Savannah had uploaded everything. The government scrambled. Resignations. Investigations. Arrests. The system was collapsing. Logan and Savannah vanished into the wind. For the first time in years, Logan felt peace. The final scene. A remote cabin. Somewhere in the mountains. Savannah sat by the fire, staring at the stars. Logan walked up beside her. "You did good, kid." Savannah smiled. "I learned from the best." Logan nodded. Proud. Tired. Ready to disappear. And then, a knock at the door. Logan's jaw tightened. Because no one was supposed to find them. He pulled out his gun, exchanging a glance with Savannah. And then he opened the door. Cut to black. Final call to action, join the mission. And that, my friends, is the end of Logan Hawthorne's story, or is it? We've followed his revenge, his sacrifice, and his fight against corruption. Now, I have one question for you. If you were in Logan's shoes, would you have done the same? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. And hey, we've come this far together. If you love this story, hit that like button. Subscribe for more gripping tales. Share this with someone who loves bold, emotional, action-packed stories. We started with 1,000 subscribers. Now, we're aiming for 2,000. Are you with me? Hit that subscribe button because this is just the beginning.